Our guest tonight is someone who needs no introduction in the Microsoft ecosystem. He's a Microsoft MVP, a prolific contributor to the community, and a legendary troubleshooter who has probably solved a problem for at least half of the people on this call. So doesn't just talk about technology, he actually lives it. And he's here to show us his personal blueprint for how his team is delivering designs, applications, and documentation in hours instead of weeks. So please, a warm welcome to Steve Endow. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, excellent. Well, let me present my screen. First, I'll give a brief introduction as I do this. My name is Steve Endow, and I don't know that I'm quite as famous as you made me out to be, but let me switch over to my presentation and let me know if you can see that okay. So I am a Microsoft MVP. I now work with Business Central. I've been an MVP for about 11 or 12 years. Previously, I worked with Microsoft Dynamics GP for the on-prem customers of the world, as you may know. But about 6 or 7 years ago, I started learning Business Central. And little did I know, like the rest of you likely, how this thing called AI would change our world, change our customers' world, and change how we do work. So it's changing very rapidly, right? To say that you knew AI 4 months ago, you might not know AI today. It's that dramatic of a change. So I know there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fear, and a lot of people are nervous about AI. So I wanted to offer a very positive, optimistic, strategic, share a strategic idea, I guess, that I think Africa, along with Latin America, where I am today, I think it offers a lot of hope and possibility for anyone in the world to really leverage these tools to become, and this is not hyperbolic, I believe you can become the best Dynamics consultants in the world and compete with anyone in the world, regardless of where you're at. So that's the message I'm going to try to convey. And let me just check my time here. Let me know if I start to go over. Okay. So a little bit about me. I live in Los Angeles, and I work out of my home office in Los Angeles. But my business partner, Tanya, she's in Utah. We have another consultant on our team in Missouri. We have a consultant in Mexico. And I am currently in our office in Berlin, El Salvador. I just came in yesterday to El Salvador. We drove in, and I am 3 hours away from the airport in a little tiny town, literally on the side of a volcano. And this little town is about 18,000 people. And I'll tell you a story of what we're doing here and why I think it's pretty possible for AI to help consultants become the best in the world. So I have a little bit of a crazy story, and I'll go through the story that I went through, the emotional journey of AI and what this means, and how we all kind of freaked out about losing our jobs. But then we saw, no, these things are not just magical robots that'll take your job. You really need to start working with them, learn how to use them in order for them to be effective for what we do as consultants. So let's go on a journey. So I believe that this is a global opportunity. So I would argue if you have electricity, internet, a computer, and now this thing called AI, whatever that means for your business, I believe that you can have a fighting chance to be one of the best consultants in the world. And it doesn't really matter where you are. The only challenge we have is time zones, right? So coordinating with customers and colleagues through time zones is the remaining challenge of wherever we're at in the globe. For example, this is Berlin, El Salvador. This is the tiny town in El Salvador where I'm at now. In the background where that white car is, our office is right next door. And this is 4 out of 5 of my team members that I didn't know 2 years ago. So 18 months ago, I showed up here, knew no one, and I started to build a team in the most unlikely place on the planet, Berlin, El Salvador. And I didn't know anyone. I met people, met a couple people who spoke English, and now we have a team of 5 people, all of whom are focusing on Business Central. Some didn't speak English 18 months ago. None of them had heard of ERP 18 months ago. And now we have 3 functional consultants, 1 AL developer, and 1 PMP project manager. So we are in the middle of nowhere. I brought in laptops. I brought in all the cables and monitors. It doesn't really matter where you are. As long as you can get access to the electronics, the technology, internet, and electricity. So this is Franklin right here. 18 months ago, Franklin knew some English from watching YouTube videos and anime, but he couldn't speak English, couldn't speak business English. He knew nothing about Business Central. He took a 10-month English course. He started to learn about Business Central and AL development. And now Franklin is a highly productive Business Central AL developer. This is an example of a document we call a PRD. And if you've worked with AI and done AI-based development, a PRD, I've never heard of this before until AI. It's a product requirements document. So Franklin, who didn't speak English 18 months ago, is now crafting product requirement documents for our new Business Central App Source apps from scratch. So here's version 2.0. We completely redesigned it based on feedback and testing that we got. I said, okay, this isn't working. Let's completely scrap it and rewrite it. And he did it by creating this PRD document, AI generated PRD document. He then used AI to fully develop this application. He understands AL. He's troubleshooting the AL, but the AI tools are writing all of the code, dozens of code units, pages, extensions, you name it. The full project is AI generated. All of this, down to the permission sets, is AI generated, but Franklin is steering the AI. And once he has the application, he says, hey, Copilot, can you generate full user guides, full implementation guides, full test guides? I want to know step by step how to test this application so that we can hand this to our functional consultant. This would have taken weeks in the past. Franklin is able to do this in 1 to 2 days now. He's able to generate the PRD, completely write the application, completely write the user tests step by step in less than 2 days. He commits it, pushes it to DevOps, our pipelines run, we have a new build for testing. I don't know about you, but this is pretty groundbreaking, I think. And if anyone has a question, feel free to jump in and ask or put it in the chat. I can't see the chat, so Joyce, if you're able to let me know if there's a question that comes in. So think about that. Franklin in Berlin, El Salvador, this tiny little town in the middle of nowhere, El Salvador, now with a laptop and an internet connection or cell phone, he's using AI to build an app source app from scratch for a client in the United States. And we're going to start selling this application. I don't have words for how that is possible these days, but I wouldn't have believed it, but I've seen it and I've made it happen. So what if I told you that based off of a 15-minute phone call, I could generate this document This is like an 18-page functional requirements document. I fed it some notes into the AI, said, hey, here's what the customer wants to do. Here's kind of how they want to do it. Here's the requirements of what we need to accomplish. AI generated this 18-page document, which involved importing what we call a BAI2 file from the bank that records direct debit payments to vendors. And a couple months ago, I wouldn't have known what that meant. I had to do some research, but AI crafted an 18-page document. I didn't write a single word. It wrote the specifications for how we work with this BAI2 file. We have the group header, the account header, the continuation, the account trailer. I don't know what these segments are, these record types are within BAI. It did the research. It wrote the document for me. It gave me instructions on how I'm going to design and build this application. It even created the wireframe mock-ups of what the custom pages will look like. I said, hey, thanks for this functional requirement document, Copilot. By the way, could you create some pretty pictures of what these windows will look like in Business Central? It said, no problem, Steve. 5 minutes later, I had wireframes. This was on a Friday night at about 10 p.m. I sent this to a partner. He said, can we talk to the customer about this? And I said, sure, anytime. We had a call with the customer, and this was one of the major blockers for them to implement Business Central. They said, how are we going to solve this problem if we move to Business Central? I said, hey, we're happy to build this for you. And we'll even make it an AppSource app. We won't charge you. We'll just charge you the annual subscription for the application. We will not charge you to develop this. Because now I can develop this in a week or several days instead of several weeks or several months. In 15 minutes, I was able to create all of this design doc, and in a couple days, I know I can now build this application using AI tools. I don't know if any of you have tried this, but it's almost hard to believe that this is real. So you might doubt me. If you've never used these tools, you would doubt me that normally it would take us 80 to 100 to 120 hours to develop this solution. It now can be done in less than 8 hours. This is an integration with a web application, a SaaS service called Flowcast. And I challenged myself to fully vibe code this, design it using AI, requirements, specification, PRD, full development, full testing, documentation, everything. I didn't write a single line of code. I didn't even read a single line of code. Everything is 100% AI generated. And now that I've practiced and know how to do it, I could easily do this in less than 8 hours. This would have absolutely required more than 80 to 120 hours to do previously in the pre-AI era. All of this was developed by AI. Every single thing. It made the choices as to which fields to put on this list page, the status in green or yellow or red if it failed. It did everything. I would have thought this was impossible in the past. My developers thought this was impossible until I showed them. Now, my senior developer and Franklin, my junior developer here in El Salvador, they can both do this in hours. And this right here, this integration diagnostics, this was troubleshooting. It was having an error it couldn't figure out. I told it, don't try to fix it in the code. Add diagnostics so you can self-diagnose the problem. So it added this dialogue. I didn't tell it what to add. I simply copy this text, I paste it into Copilot. It says, I now find the problem. Thank you for all this data. Let me go fix the code. It now provides its own diagnostic data. It fixes the problem and prepares a new release for me. I then said, well, given that we have all this troubleshooting, we have data generation, I want to see if my accounts are right, my dimensions, my dates, the balance sheet, the income statement. I want to see if the API is working. We have all these pieces for this integration. I said, can you build me a preview screen so I can see everything? I can see if the data is right. I can see if the API is working. I can download the JSON. I can view it. It said, sure, Steve. 5 minutes later, I have a dedicated page to diagnose everything. Everything you could possibly want to know about what this thing is doing, it generates. It even generated a new type of window that I have never seen before that allows me to view thousands of lines of JSON. It figured out that there's no good way to do that in BC. So it said, hey, what if I put the JSON in a temp table and let you see it in a list page? And that's what this is. I would have spent weeks. I would have never come up with this solution. The AI did it in a few minutes. I can now search anything in this JSON using its crazy idea of a list page for JSON. If you don't think AI is going to radically change the Business Central development landscape and the F&O and the CE and every other aspect of our lives, I would strongly encourage you to learn how it works and just try it. And be patient, give it a chance, and see what amazing things you could do. Every single line of this application was written by AI. I literally have not looked at a single line. It's like, that's your enum? Great. If there's a problem with that enum, guess what? You'll fix it. I don't care. It's too much code for me to review. 2,000 lines of code. As long as it works, as long as it achieves the goal, and as long as I know there's a problem, I can just have you fix it. All of this is done via AI. A truly incredible achievement. So if you're skeptical, totally justified. You'll say, Steve, that's nice. Yes. Was there a question?
Yes, there's a question.
Yes.
From Vanessa is asking, I'm in business. How can I use AI to develop my business and let it fully run remotely from website to social media and workers?
Okay, that's a great question. I'm playing with a new tool and that's a much broader, challenging question. So for now, I'll start with the consulting aspects, but remind me at the end to talk about that. And one thing I'm playing with that many people are using to try and automate website, social media, sales, initial sales contacts, and marketing. That's a project called OpenClaw that is pushing all of the AI companies, Anthropic, OpenAI, Cursor, and even Microsoft to come up with full business automation solutions. So great question. It is actively being explored. Okay, so kind of related. You may say, that's great, Steve, but I don't do that all day, or I do something different. Can it really do what I needed to do, this magical AI thing? I would say you might be pretty surprised at what it can do. So I asked it a question. I was brushing my teeth one morning. It was 6:30 a.m. And I said, hey, we have this project plan with like 90 items or 86 items on the project plan. And I said, hey, I'm chatting with this bot called OpenClaw. Brushing my teeth, typing in this my cell phone, I said, how do we calculate or assess risk? Is one task riskier than another on this project? I don't know about you, but I've done this for many years. And one thing I hate about big complex project is I don't know which task is going to cause problems. I may think this task is going to be easy. Guess what? It turns out to be a nightmare, and we go over budget because of this one task that I thought was going to be easy, and it ends up being very complex, very difficult, and the customer gets upset over that one task. I want to know, how can I know about that in advance? So I asked an AI bot about project risk criteria, calculations. How do we assess project risk? And it teaches me about PMBOK ISO 31000 style risk assessment for projects. I've never heard of this in my life. I have not had formal project management education. I did not go to college learning this stuff. I do not have a degree in project management, project risk analysis. I'm sure there's academic programs for that. I don't have it. I usually work with small projects, small customers. Not a single person in any company I've ever worked with has done ISO 31000 project risk assessment. So I just learned something. Guess what? An AI is now teaching me how to assess risk in a project. And our PMP, our project manager, is also learning what the AI is teaching us. So that's just kind of this crazy thing that I never would have thought an AI would help us with. As a result, I had my AI bot called OpenClaw go to Teams. I connected it to Microsoft Teams and I said, create a Teams planner project based on a sample project based on a hypothetical Business Central implementation. It said, sure, Steve, here's a full project plan from requirements to governance to discovery, solution design. It created all the buckets in Teams Planner. It created all the tasks. And I asked it to do its best job guessing what the risk is for each of these tasks, and then update every single task with its risk score. It did it automatically in 2 minutes. So you'll see there's an R in front of each one of these tasks. That's its guess of the risk assessment of the simplest calculation, what's called a 5x5 calculation. How likely is this going to be a problem, and how significant of a problem will it be? You take a score of 1 to 5, multiply it by 1 to 5, and you can get a score of from 1 to 25. And it scored everything on this project by talking to Teams in 2 minutes. This would have easily taken several hours for a project manager to do manually. So this is one example of how I'm taking an AI, a bot, connecting it to Teams, to email, to Telegram, to Discord, to all the chats, you name it. It has its own email, and it's just updating things for me, saving us hours of work. I would have never thought this was possible before. So every day I'm asking, how can AI help me save time or make my life easier? Here's another one. This flowchart was generated by AI. And pick your tool. It could be Copilot, it could be Cursor, it could be OpenAI, ChatGPT, it could be Anthropic Claude. I believe I used, I don't remember which one I used for this, but I said, hey, generate a process flow diagram for the Dynamics 365 finance and operations procure to pay process. I've never used finance and operations. It's a business process, so I understand it, but I don't know the first thing about finance and operations. This is what the AI generated. This is what's called a mermaid diagram. It's a text-based diagramming language where it generates the text. I can paste it into a website. You can include this process flow in any of your documents. It could be in your proposals, your requirements, your implementation, whatever you want. And I'll show you later how people react to this. I think this is amazing. It would take me hours to draw this by hand. It's super tedious to do these. It created this draft in minutes. Phenomenal. It wrote this code. I don't know what any of this code does, but it works. I know that if there's ever a problem, I can have it go fix this code. And longtime AL developers or longtime software developers, seniors will say, that's terrible. Look at the syntax error it made. That's garbage code. I would never use AI for that. Well, I understand that, but the code works, it's performant, it gets the job done. You can always go back and have it improve the code if you want, but your competitors are using this tool to write code in hours instead of days or weeks. So it can do all of these things. It's quite phenomenal. So here's a common reaction. Nearly every organization I've spoken with has at least one or two people who have this reaction. So now I'll just offer this so you can look out for it. You can look for it in yourself when you see something that's AI generated and you say this or you think it. And then once you start to use the tools, you'll start to see it in other people. And the phrase is, look, it made a mistake. And they will instantly jump to find the mistakes in the 50-page document that was generated in 2 minutes. I cannot generate a 50-page document in a week. So if an AI gives me a very nice 50-page document in 2 minutes, I am very